So I'm going to show you a real quick whip finish. How we doing on time right now? We're quite a ways into it.
Yeah, we're good.
Um,
We got plenty of time.
okay, so for a whip finish, I'm just going to stick some thread on here just to pretend we have a fly. Um, so I'm going to zoom out. Okay. So with my whip finish tool, I'm going to set the tool against the thread. You can see that top hook is set against the thread, and that see where that bottom notch is in that
Yes.
loop. So I'm going to pull the thread up straight like that. So now as I start to move forward, I'm hooking that thread, but I'm keeping it in that notch on there, and I make a triangle like this, right?
Okay.
So if you want to see that again, I'll lay this against the thread, and then I'll grab it with that hook. And then with this bottom little notch right there, I'll pull the thread up, and I start to make a rotation. I make a little triangle there. So then I keep my thread tight, straight back toward the hook, and I just take that triangle and rotate. And as you move forward, you're covering up the thread that you have wrapped underneath it, and that finishes your head. I'm going to try to undo it so I can take the thread off of there. So I'll do that with a heavier thread, and I'll focus on that when we get to the next fly. So again, that's one of my favorite crappie flies because I think it imitates a minnow, and it also imitates different nymphs that might be in the water. The next one is kind of, I had a little bit of history I wanted to kind of get into. It'll just take me a minute. So let me put the switch to my other camera. So this book, Practical Flies and Their Construction. I got this actually as part of a fly tying kit. I think Wapsi and several other. I bought this kit from Cabela's. Several fly tying kits included this book. The book is by Lacey G. He was from Iowa, and he had a pretty interesting history. In the 1930s, he became an expert P-9 combat biplane pilot for the Army Air Corps, and later trained transport glider pilots for the invasion of Europe during World War II. For a time, he was also a professional golfer, but his real passion was fly fishing and fly tying. He discovered that marabou feathers from common domestic turkeys that we use for our Thanksgiving dinner was a great substitute for illegal African stork marabou, and turkey marabou became one of the most widely used tying materials today. But one of his greatest accomplishments was founding the Wapsi Fly Company in 1945 on the banks of the Wapsipinicon River in Independence, Iowa. It was sold in 1973 to Tom Schmucker and was later moved to Mountain Home, Arkansas. So Lacey co-authored a book in 1955 with his friend and fishing partner Irwin Sias, and it was included in several fly tying kits, like I said, and that's where I got this copy. But the fly, I have a little tag here. The fly that we're going to tie is called the Gimp, and he talks about it in depth in this book with some stories I won't get into about how nobody was catching anything. It was actually in the Sandhill country in Nebraska, western Nebraska. It was by Long Pine, Nebraska, where a small dam backed up a stream into a small lake, and it was full of rainbows. And nobody else was catching anything. And one guy started using the Gimp, which Lacey tied a lot of these, and he was the only one that caught anything. And then so they all switched to the Gimp, and they all caught a bunch of them. So um, instead of getting into all the stories and everything, um, we'll actually get into the fly since we're kind of running out of time. But it was featured in um, Stuart and Allen's Flies for Trout, a book. And then it was in Outdoor Life. There was an article called They Go for the Gimp. And then in 1971, I think it was in Fly Fisherman magazine.
It was published in 1966 and it's available on eBay. I'm just looking in Amazon.
Yeah, so it was originally published in 1955. It was republished or whatever they call that. This one is 1966 as well. It's a small paperback, almost a pamphlet. There's a lot of jig tying and different fly tying recipes, but it does feature the Gimp. So the Gimp, the key to the Gimp, it was a simple, hackle fiber tail. The body was made of gray wool, was the original pattern. But the key to the Gimp was Lady Amherst pheasant tippets. Now, of course, the tippets aren't used in the fly, but at the base of each one of these feathers, you can normally buy them nowadays in where you buy actually a Lady Amherst head, and it contains these crest feathers. It also has some reddish crest feathers here. And then at the base of each one of those, let me shut that up. At the base of each one of these white feathers is one of these small aftershaft feathers. They're different than a pheasant, ringneck pheasant aftershaft feather, which is pretty long. These are pretty sturdy, and they're short, kind of a arrowhead shape. And these are what are used for the wing of the fly. So that's what makes it a really unique fly. The rest of the fly is basically just with gray hen hackle. So to start the fly off, I'm gonna start off with switch cameras here. Start off with a gray thread. This is actually, it was the most handy gray thread that I had. It's actually a Semperfly 12-aught. And I'm going to lay down just a little bit of a base here, just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to grab, what I'm using for this is actually a whiting American hackle hen neck. But I'm going to take one of the side feathers off of the hen neck and just grab some some fibers off of there and use that for a tail. Now, when you pull fibers off the side of a feather like that, sometimes the tips will get misaligned. You can take your finger and just kind of tap on the butts there and line them up a lot better. So I want the tail to be actually further than that. So I'm going to go back a little further before I tie the tail in. Excuse me. Get that out of the way. And then I'll tie the tail in. And that gives me about the right length of a tail. I want the tail to be about a half a hook shank in length again. Tie those butts down. And then again, I'm going to use muskrat. The original pattern called for gray wool. I don't have any gray wool, but I think it looks really nice with a dubbed body. Again, I'll use muskrat fur like we did before. I'll take that piece of muskrat fur and pull all those guard hairs out. Pulled some under fur there too. Pull most of the guard hairs out. And then take that and just mix it up in my fingers so I don't have parallel fibers so much. And then just start dubbing it onto the thread again. A few hairs at a time. Zoom out.
May I ask a question? Now,
Yes,
this
go ahead.
is all flat thread, right? This is not round thread then?
It really doesn't matter when you're doing dubbing like this.
Mhm.
And the reason I'm saying that is I've tried several different threads and it's always the same. When I used to struggle with dubbing, it was because I used, like, say, a big clump like this and tried to dub it onto the thread. It was always a struggle. But if you take just a few hairs, they'll spin around that thread. And then if you want a thicker dubbing noodle, just take a few more fibers and layer them. But you never want to start with a big, thick clump of dubbing. And I really don't think it matters if it's flat thread or round thread. A round thread, by the way, I think uni thread is a round thread. A lot of what I use is UTC, so I can split thread if I want to. This Semper Fly thread that I started using, it's very thin and very strong, but it is a multi-fiber. It's like a gel spun type of I think they call it nano silk. So again, I'm just taking small bits of dubbing and just layering it, make it a thicker dubbing noodle. All right, that should be just about right. And that's probably the hardest part. So I'm going to work my way back to the base of the tail there. And then I'm going to dub a body here. So about 2.5 inches was just about perfect there. So now I'm going to take, like I said, I took I bought a Amherst crest head. It came with the head, these tippets, and then the red crest feathers. And I basically just harvested the usable stuff from it. I want to take two of these. I call them Gimp feathers. They're the after shaft feather. They're at the base of every single one of these white and black long tippet feathers here. Now, if you look at a golden pheasant, has similar tippets, only they're yellow. I'll show you those in a second. Those have very similar after shaft feathers. They're the same shape, but they're a lot smaller in size. So if you want to tie these down to size maybe 14, 16, this is a size 10, and that's what the original Gimp was tied in. It was a size 10. I've got two feathers now stacked up on top of each other. And I'm going to tie those in. Excuse me for bumping the camera. So they lay across the back of the fly like that. Come forward a little bit, and then there's a little bit of stem sticks out past the eye that I don't want that to be there. With the golden pheasant, you have these same type of tippet feathers. They're a little bit more flat on the ends. They also have a feather at the base of each one of these, much smaller. So again, those would be for the smaller sizes of a Gimp.
Mike, if I could interrupt for just a second.
Go ahead.
I just dug this out and I thought you might like to see it.
Hang on, let me spotlight you for a second.
This might help people understand. Okay. This is a Amherst pheasant skin, the full skin. And this was donated to Healing Waters. So
if you take any one of those white and black feathers out at the base of that, should be that.
see right there.
Just pluck one of those out of there off the neck.
They grab a big one so you can see it.
And that's where like on a rooster neck, on a chicken neck, that's where the hackle would be. But
Okay.
for these pheasants, it's actually a flat tippet. So at the very base of that feather, you see that?
Yes.
Right there.
If you pull that forward, then that's the Gimp feather. It's called the after shaft.
Yeah. So that's where it comes from.
Thank you, John.
There's the head, and there's the neck. So
yep. And the way I bought it was just the head and the neck feathers there.
Yeah, and here you can see
the whole skin.
And here's the crest that Mike was talking about. Right
yeah, the red crest.
Yeah.
On a
okay. See it.
On a golden pheasant, that crest is actually
gold.
It's gold.
Yeah, and I've got one of them hanging up on the
Like
wall
that.
too. So
yeah. So let me change the angle a little bit. Thank you, John.
Yep. Finally found a use for that donation.
Yeah. All right. So we've got the after shaft feathers laid over the top. So now what I want to do is get into that soft hackle and grab a size 10 feather out of there. And if you want to get, you could kind of hold that feather against, it's kind of hard to do it from that angle. take that
Mike, could you
feather and
explain
hold.
what you mean by a size 10 feather?
Yes.
That's what I'm doing right now. So
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
if you take a feather off of there that you just kind of judge might be just about right, you can take it and kind of bend it around the shank of the hook a little bit and see how far those hang. Another thing you can do is take these fibers and stick them out from the stem and hold them
Okay,
Up.
okay, I can understand that.
hold them up to the fly
Yep.
and see if they hang about a hook shank. So I'm going to use that one. And what I'm going to do is take the very tip of it and pull it back like this, where I have a little wedge sticking off of the front of that. I'm actually going to make that a little bit bigger. And I'm going to lay. So this is it's kind of hard to tell on a gray feather, but this is the outside of the feather and this is the concave side of the feather. On most types of hackle, you can tell the pretty side and the dull side. But I'm going to take this convex side toward the top, and I'm going to hold it on top of the shank. I'm going to take a couple of wraps forward. Then I'm going to take that tip and I'm going to bend it back and wrap over it and then come back toward the eye. So now I can take that tip, if I can find it, there it is. I'm going to take that tip and just snap forward like that and break it off. Now I'm going to take my barbules and bend them backwards like this a little bit just to get me going in the right direction. And I'm just going to take that feather and wrap it forward. About 3 wraps. And so I took 1 turn and then a couple turns in the front, another turn up here on my thread, and a couple turns in front. And then I have that trapped good and I can go ahead and snip out the stem. And then I'll wrap that back I wrapped it back toward that hackle. So now I'm going to take my whip finish tool. And I don't know if you can see it as good with this thread, but a good whip finish, again, I'm going to lay the whip finish tool, zoom out. I'm going to lay the tool against the thread and hook it and then wrap up around that bottom part, make a triangle. And then what I want to do is start at the back of the head and work forward, because every wrap I do forward is going to wrap over the thread underneath it. And then when I pull that tight, everything is going to be covered by the wraps on the outside. Stick it in the eye of the hook and give me some tension. Got the thread. And that's a gimp fly. It's a very standard nymph with a soft hackle and a tail and a dubbed body. But the difference with the gimp is this feather that goes over the back. And whether that makes it look like a scud, a caddis that dives underwater to lay eggs. It could be a lot of different things that it's imitating. But I will tell you that the gimp fly is excellent crappie fly. Again, I don't know if this imitates maybe a small bait fish. But in the very early spring, you're not going to have a whole lot of young of the year minnows or small fish. So that's definitely my number 2 go-to for crappie. Any questions on the Gimp?
Well, I think I'm going to have to tie some of those and the other one because I want to do some crappie fishing this year, and I've never been able to get out early enough in the morning to go get some. I'm going to have to set my alarm this year.
The key with the once you get into the crappie spawn, I can only speak for Omaha Lakes. As you go at different parts of the country, you've got different lake bottoms, you got different shores. In the types of reservoirs we have here in, in Nebraska, they're basically farmland that's filled up to make a reservoir for flood control. And when they do that, normally the dam and a few wind structures are built with riprap rocks, huge rocks. You can kind of walk around on them if you feel like a billy goat. But any dam of any lake that has good crappie in it, if you hit it at the right time in the spring, you can actually walk along and you can see the crappie down in there. Sometimes when you look at them, they look like they're maybe about 8 inches, but that's with the refraction. They're actually probably a 10 to 11 inch crappie. So if you can see them down in there and you can see them darting back and forth, they're chasing little bluegill away from the maybe the small fry or the eggs that are in the nest. Maybe chasing small crappie even away from their nests. A lot of times, if it's real still, you can walk along and you can actually see dimples in the water where they're actually chasing other fish away from their nests. So basically, the male finds an area around some rocks, some gravel, and sets up a nest. The female comes in and says, "Yeah, okay, I like your nest." So she'll lay her eggs there, and then the male will protect those eggs and then protect the fry until basically the weeds get too choked to where the little fry can go off and hide in the weeds by themselves. So there's probably a 6-week window in there from where it very first starts and to where the end of it is, where crappie can be found in probably 1 to 6 feet of water in most of the lakes around the Omaha area. Lincoln probably, eastern Nebraska is probably all about the same. Sometimes they'll hit a fly out of like to chase it away, out of protection. Most of the time they're hungry because they're just focusing on protecting those young. They're not focusing on going out and hunting for food. So anything that goes by that looks remotely like food, they're going to eat it. I use a lot of 7-Eleven. I use a lot of hair wing streamers.